yet locally, you can please do so now. And then the host can start recording to the cloud as well. All right. I'm going to begin as our time is ticking, but I trust that we will have more joining us and that the team will keep an eye onto the waiting room and admit any participants that are still wanting to join. Perhaps also just to say, if you do have any questions on interpretation or even translation, please also post those in the chat. We have a wonderful team that can support you and help you figure out any complications, should there be some. Nadine, you can move to the next slide, please. So we've been saying in the last 3 sessions, we've been on a journey together. We've explored quite a few different aspects of what multi-level advocacy looks like. And this session specifically is dedicated to the theme ready for practice. And this was something that was really important to the 3 facilitators of this co-learning space, Henrique, Hala, and Emmanuel. If you haven't met them yet, they might give a brief wave on the screen so that you know who they are, but they are really the ones that have been putting a lot of time together with the support of HIC staff, Ireli and Nadine, into conceptualizing this co-learning and advocacy space for us. So as I mentioned, today is really dedicated to ready for practice. We've explored a lot of different aspects, interplay between the local, regional, and the global, and what does it look like for us practically to be pursuing different advocacy actions in these various different levels. So Nadine, I'll ask you to skip to the next slide, please. Oh yeah, this is just a reminder of the very first of one of the images that you will have seen when we invited you to this co-learning and advocacy space, just to link us back to the beginning. What I would actually like to begin with is to share a discussion with you that I had together with Joseph, Shekla, Maria, Sylvia, Emanuele, and Ahmed Mansour, who are the regional coordinators of HIC Latin America, HIC Middle East, North Africa, and the Housing and Land Rights Network. And of course, as this co-learning space has been running, we've been very much reflecting on the various discussions and the aspects that have been raised. And one very important thing that we wanted to share with you or to explore together was this idea that we'd initially called this co-learning and advocacy space multi-level advocacy. And we realized that actually in this word level, there's an implication, or maybe a subtle implication, that there's a hierarchy of different levels, so that perhaps it might imply that local is at the bottom and global at the top, and that's something that is not the case. And we were discussing how much more perhaps constructive and accurate it might be to speak about advocacy in multiple spheres, since where we act, the local, the regional, or the global space all very much coexist on the same level. And that is something, perhaps as we come to this session, instead of speaking about multi-level advocacy, to think of it as multi-sphere advocacy. And particularly to think of these different spheres as very much connecting, interlocking at the same level. So within that, I'd like to also begin by taking us on a brief review or a reflection on the journey of the last 3 sessions that we've been on. I realize also that I haven't introduced myself. My name is Yolande Hendler. I'm the General Secretary of HIC. So session 1, what we'll be looking at. It was titled Understanding Advocacy. And we began with building a common understanding. As you know, in parallel to our live sessions, we've also been having very robust discussions on the Google Classroom space. And there've been different activities that you've engaged with on Google Classrooms. And there was this question around, what is advocacy to you? What do you understand by it? And some of the takeaways here were that advocacy is mobilizing, strategizing, and taking action. And particularly to influence decision makers and generate transformation. And of course, generating transformation, influencing decision makers happens and can happen in many different avenues. First and foremost, we're looking at generating transformation in people's lives and lived experiences. Transformation can relate to changes in values and public attitudes. More commonly, or perhaps often when we think of advocacy, we're also thinking of changes in laws, public policies, particular projects, changes in public budgets, government budgets, just to name a few. In this first session, we had a wonderful combination of hearing from a very practical on-the-ground experience through the Zero Evictions campaign in Brazil, which was presented to us by Margaret Matiko Uemura, please excuse my pronunciation. And in particular, she was taking us through the very concrete experience of identifying the impact and the vision, and also the various steps that needed to be taken in order to actually craft this campaign that did not only have a local reach in Brazil, but very much actually included organizations and activists from around the globe. You can have a look at the Google Classroom folder to deep dive back into that. We then, from this very grounded and practical experience of what advocacy looked like, we spent some time thinking about how do we approach advocacy. And Lauren Royston from the Socio-Economic Rights Institute of South Africa shared with us a number of different tactics and approaches that are used by CERI, which is her organization. But I think what I want to draw out are the 4 points that you can see on the slide that help us to think about advocacy in a way that becomes very tangible. And the one was for us to think about, or for you and for me to think about, what are the priority issues? What is it that is your priority issue? Then she was speaking about what methods do you have access to? And here what was important was not what methods are the best to use, but what is it that is tangible to you in your context, in your country, in your particular environment. The third aspect to consider is what spaces do you want to practically impact? And then, even though this was perhaps featuring at the end, something that was really critical from that presentation was this constant reading of context, reading your context, needing to read and reread context, and to particularly do that together, given that our political, social, and economic contexts, environmental contexts are constantly changing. Session 2, if you could skip to the next slide, please. We zoomed out now to look at two quite big questions, actually. The first being, what is the human right to housing? Or the question being really, what is the human right to housing and related international obligations? And we were looking at advocacy there, particularly in relation to human rights systems. We had a very experienced presenter, Christian Curtis from the OHCHR, speaking to us about global normative and then also institutional frameworks on the right to housing. And a couple of points that stood out to me and to the team were how he highlighted to us what are some of the primary bodies to interact with when it comes to these global obligations, international obligations. One of them being the Committee on Social, Economic and Cultural Rights, which is more commonly known as ECOSOC. Then to engage with the Special Rapporteur on the right to housing. That's a very accessible avenue for civil society organizations. And also in your regions to connect with regional systems, such as the African Union and the Inter-American system. He spoke about considering international covenants and obligations on the right to housing, not just considering them, but being very aware of them, that these form the bedrock and the foundation, and particularly made mention of General Observation 4 and 7, which you can look up. And then lastly, also made a link to the importance of the Sustainable Development Goals for the right to housing. As we did with the previous session, we then linked to a practical example and looking at human rights advocacy in a complex, adaptive social system. The presentation was shared with us by Wessam Ahmad from an organization in Palestine called HIC. And he shared very much the practical experiences from HIC and looked at advocacy in complex systems, where Sam spoke a lot about encountering struggles, problems along the way, obstacles, and that these can be seen and approached not as deterrents, but actually as opportunities to make breakthrough, and that he said obstacles can be the path. He spoke also about the power and at the same time the difficulty and the challenges of creating data, accessing data to form robust arguments on various priorities. And then spoke also about building relationships and appropriate strategies for realizing human rights. Session 3 was now looking at advocacy and the global development system. And this sort of links back a little bit to that graph of the 3 spheres that I was speaking about at the beginning, looking at connecting local, regional, and global international advocacy spheres. And even though it wasn't perhaps very explicit, we looked specifically at 2 examples of the global development system, namely the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and the new urban agenda. And we had 2 speakers, one of them being Samuel Olondo from Pamoja Trust, Kenya, and he explained various challenges and looked at a grounded response to engaging with the global development system in a very local context, namely Kenya, and spoke about spatial inequality, strategic and social planning as levers to drive change. He spoke about the relevance of community organizing, training for strengthening capacities, mapping, and then also looked at 2 concrete examples of how Kenya is linking with the Sustainable Development Agenda. Lorena Zarate from the Global Platform for the Right to the City and previous HIC president, shared the experience of the platform and particularly the civil society journey and a bottom-up tactics leading up to the Habitat 3 conference in 2016, and how the Global Platform, together with its members, influenced the new urban agenda with commitments to include the right to the city. Then closing off that session, we had a really rich reflection from our HIC president, Adriana Allen. And two of her comments stood out to me that I wanted to close off with here. The one was that she was saying, in all of the previous sessions and the sessions that we've been looking at, we are talking not only about fighting against, but focusing also on what are we fighting for. And she reminded us that advocacy is really a long-term process, and that rights and achieving rights are the outcomes of long-term struggles. So that's just by way of introduction and a review of the last 3 sessions. I see Joseph has added, my colleague Joseph has just added a comment, which I will invite him to share later. But I will now hand over to my colleague Nadine, who will take us through the rest of the session. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Yolanda. Welcome everyone to our 4th session, multi-level advocacy. So today we will be hearing from 2 speakers. Firstly, Noor Zada, and then our very own Hala Murad later down the line. I just want to touch on the aims for today, so the kind of strategic objectives and what our agenda aims to achieve today. So really we're looking to acquire more skills and tools to strategize and succeed in advocacy actions at multiple levels, as Yolanda nicely described in that diagram with the sphere. We're also aiming to identify the importance of cross-regional networking with HIC members, which is the overall kind of co-learning aim, this co-learning process. In both the presentations you will hear today, we'll be seeing firstly the theory behind the strategic effectiveness method, which supports activists in their advocacy processes. And then we'll hear it in a case study version from Hala, how those are being used practically. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome our first speaker, Ms. Noor Zada. Noor is the MENA Regional Director for New Tactics. She's joining us today as a trainer and expert in the field of advocacy in the human rights-based approach. She works with activists from across the MENA region and provides training and mentoring in a process that is called strategic effectiveness method. This approach was developed by New Tactics, and the aim is to help activists be more focused, creative, and more likely to succeed in their advocacy efforts. So Noor describes herself as an activist and a mother, and we're lucky enough to have her here today talking to us. Noor, I'm going to give you permission to share your slides, and then you can take the floor. Thank you.
Okay, good evening, good morning, depends on your location. I'm so glad to be here with you. I'll be sharing my slide. So I'll just briefly start by presenting the program and what exactly we do. Can you see my slides? Just want to check.
Yes, you can see them, yeah.
Perfect.
Yes,
Thank you
yes.
so much. So as Nadine said, I works at the New Tactics in Human Rights program. I'm leading the program in the MENA region. I just want to tell you that New Tactics in Human Rights is a program that is part of a bigger organization that's called Center for Victim of Torture. It's an organization that was established in 1985. The New Tactic program was established in 1999, and our goal was to assist a human rights organization and activists around the world to work more strategically and tactically in order to attain their objective. The issue is that many organizations and activists often isolate and use a limited range of tactics and strategies, which make it less effective. And the other problem is that usually activists are so excited about the work that they are doing. So you will find them jumping from identifying the problem to taking action on the ground. And that is out of passion, of course, and all this. But then sometimes if we don't really plan plan really good and have a strategic plan for where do we want to go, understand our terrain, it makes our life hard, and it makes it more common for us to fail in our campaign. So we support human rights network, organization, individual, and staff from different organizations. We have trained around 1,500 human rights activists from 450 organizations in 15 countries in the MENA region to develop their action plans. So without taking it longer, I'll start telling you what is the strategic effectiveness method. So, so this method would have a historical somehow background. There's a philosopher, a Chinese philosopher and warrior. His name is Sun Tzu. And he was a strategic planner and wrote a book called The Art of War. And in his book, The Art of War, he talked about 3 sources of knowledge that any leader or any strategic planner need to have in order to be able to achieve victory or achieve the campaign. So these are know yourself, know your opponents, and know your terrain. And based on these 3 sources of knowledge that we should have as activists or, campaigners, whatever we want to call ourselves, are really important. And based on these, we have developed the strategic effectiveness method. I would like to share with you some of Sun Tzu quotations. And the first one, it says, strategy without tactics is the slowest route to victory. And tactics without strategy is the noise before defeat. And like, if we look at these really express how activists usually work. So many times we do have this amazing 5-year strategy, but then we don't have actions to implement that strategy. So then even if we're going to have victory, it's going to be like, that's the slowest route we're going. And tactics without strategy is the noise before defeat. So you could implement as many tactics as you want, but at the end, you will not achieve your goal because you really don't have a strategy and a clear goal from the beginning. So it's very simple. 5 steps, a strategic effectiveness. This means we have 5 steps, and we have this circle that summarize. So the first one is identify the problem. The second one is create a vision, map the terrain, explore tactics, and take action. And I'm gonna move with you in these steps one by one. Okay, so we may imagine the journey of doing a campaign, or as we call it, the journey of change, changing for better, for equal rights, for justice, and all that. It looks so much like climbing a mountain. And in that one, you would have the base camp, where your problem is. So you are here, and then you will take a certain route to reach to your goal, which is the top of the mountain. But until you reach that top of the mountain, you will have other camps that you will rest at, and that you will need to, it could be successes. So each camp is successes that you would celebrate, and your achievements, review what you have done so far, what should have happened differently if that wasn't a success, gain power, talk with others and consult them. And in this journey, it's challenging, as you can see. We're going up the mountain. It's not easy. It's not a paved road that you're working. So some challenges you are really ready for. You're waiting, and you would see that you would need water, for example. There's certain things that you would say in that journey, but also there's challenging that you don't know and will suddenly come. So there could be an avalanche, or really bad weather, or someone would get sick, so you have to go back, or so many challenges might appear. So in this journey, when we do our campaign, we also need to be so ready for the challenges that we have in account, and for the challenges that are unexpected, and how do we reroute, how do we work around them, and to reach our goal. So the first step is identify your problem. And this one is really important. We usually think that many people would say, okay, so global warming, for example, or would say smoking in public areas, or we would say poverty, but then that at a certain point, this seems very broad. And having the issue is very broad will not help you. We need to make sure that we're identifying a specific issue that we are working on, to be able to move forward. Then the other thing is that we need also to think of the human rights-based approach. So don't think of any problem as a need only, but think of it as a human rights based. So what is the right that is linked to your problem that you want that right to be accomplished? So what is the right that you want other people to enjoy? And when we link things to rights, this holds governments, decision makers accountable for the actions that we are asking for. We're not asking out of pity. We're not asking because you're kind and please do that for us, and if you don't do it, we can't survive or anything. No, we're asking for this because it's our right. And this is very important mindset to have, and it's really important mindset to have among people who are working on environmental issues, because you would, at least that's my notice in the MENA region, in the Middle East and North Africa, we will notice that people are asking for raising awareness, or doing these conferences and all that. But when they're doing campaign, they're not linking that to a human rights-based approach. And this is really critical and important, because when you link it to rights, it takes your advocacy or your campaign to totally new level in your work. You're the right holder, you're the right, but you're requesting for that right. And then there's so many to support you. There's international laws, there's treaties, there's the UN declaration, there's even local laws that you will find that supports you in what you're asking for. And it's very important to narrow focus and choose a point to get started. Sometimes we get really tempted to work, we want to make this world a better place. We want to have this, magical life, la la land, but then that is not really achievable all the time. And that's why we say always have a starting point, as small as that might seem, but then that is your success, and that what you are capable of doing. So select a problem that you are able to work on it. So you want to work, for example, on recycling. You can't start in the whole country. You could start in a governorate, or even in a school, or even in a neighborhood. So where is your starting point? Start on the level that you can. If you are a national organization that have offices all around the country that you are working on, starting big could be something. But then if you are an organization with limited resources, then start from a starting point you think you will achieve success. This success that you are achieving at a small point will help you then achieve bigger and bigger steps when you move forward. Testing your advocacy ability as well on a small start also will give you power, will give you more confidence, and that will help you to move forward on more national advocacy and more international advocacy. And then we always say that if you want to address your problem statement, use the 6 questions to formulate that problem. Everyone knows them: who, what, how, when, where, and why. And we always say ask why 5 times. In many cases, we find people working on not the root of the issue, but then the result of it, which then they will not reach anywhere. So it's very important to make sure that we're handling the root of the issue and not only general. There's this triangular analysis that I'd always like to, excuse me. I'm sorry. Can you see my screen or no?
Yes, we're seeing the beginning of the presentation again.
I'm sorry.
No, it's fine.
Yeah, so the triangular analysis is an upside down triangle where you need to start to identify where is your starting point for advocacy. Okay, so one tip is for content. And here we talk about legal content. We talk about laws, legislation, policies, governmental decisions, bylaws, anything. So that's the content here. And then the content could be amazing. So we could have an amazing law related to, for example, forest or certain types of tree, or using water resources. So we could have really good policies on that, but then the implementation is the issue. So the content is there, it's supportive, it helps your work, but then there's no implementation. So the implementation power, which should be by the government or the implementing body, is not doing well. So this means that in this case, I need to work on implementation. But then if the content is not good, so there's a certain law that violates actually what we want to do, or that allows smoking in public area, or allows whatever issue you're working on, it's actually against it. So this means that the content, we need to work on the content. So we're modifying the law, we're changing the decision, we're all that. Sometimes the content is not even there. So, there's an issue and it's not regulated. There's no law about it. So this means that we need to come with a draft bill, come with a draft decision, talk to decision maker to issue a decision related to it. So these are the tips that we're either working on the content or on the structure and how that is implemented. But the really important thing that we shouldn't forget is the culture, which is here. And the culture is our spiral going up to anywhere. So if we don't have the culture, and the culture is, it means local people, local community. What is the culture toward this? Is it with that law, without, not with that law, with the change, not with the change? So we need to work on that culture. And it is our spiral either to go to the content itself and advocate for it, or advocate for the structure. So this is really important when we are talking about when we are identifying the problem. Then we talk about the vision, and it's really important to have a common vision in order to be able to collect people around you. So I could be interested in your issue, but then I don't know what's your vision, or what is it that you are dreaming of. And the vision is something like positive, something far beyond our reach at this moment. It's not the goal, definitely. So it's only a vision that would gather us all together and help us work toward the same direction. It's flexible, and it knows the exact amount of when the goal was achieved. So if we're achieving goals, we know that this is one step toward our bigger vision. The third step, which is the most important actually, is map the terrain. And usually, as I said, we see activists or people who are working on a campaign identify the problem and directly skip these 3 steps and goes to action planning. Now we have an action plan. We want to do a march. We want to have a painting on the walls. We want to do cycling. They start thinking of actions, but is it a step ahead toward climbing the mountain, or are you still in the base camp doing all these activities? So map the terrain. We have 2 tools that we use, and I'm going to be sharing here the paper tools, and then I'm going to be showing you a movie on an electronic tools. It's free use for everyone, can use it to start their campaigns. So the tactical map is a tool where help you to, you were talking about the multi-level advocacy or multi-sphere, and this is exactly here. These are the multi-spheres that have relationship to the issue that you're planning to work. So at the center, we have this something that's called the central relationship. Then we have here direct relationship, which is our relations that are on local level. So on your local level, this could be your neighborhood, your municipality, your governorate. And then here we have people who we've identified based on national level. So on the whole country, that's the national. And then on the last one is the international level. And it's really important to look at this map. And some people sometimes working on national level, on local level would say, what would I benefit from international organization, who are interested in this? But at a certain point, they will see that a big support could be achieved from them. I will mention just, so one example, once in 2007, I was working in Jordan with a coalition on changing the association law in Jordan. And, we've reached a dead end because of so many things, though we had worked with the parliament, with the senates, with the government itself, the ministries. And then the law was somehow approved and sent for the king for his signature, which is the final level of approval. At that point, what we did is that we wrote Human Rights Watch a letter. And that letter actually just outlined how the new law is violating our rights as NGO to function and to work and all that. So then Human Rights Watch sent an open letter to the Prime Minister, to the Parliament's head, and also to the King. And that letter helped us to, the King rejected the law. It was sent back to the Parliament, and it helped us to do some amendments, not the whole amendments that we were wishing for, but some amendments to the law that we wanted to embed. So this shows you that sometimes you're working on Jordan level, but then that meant that we were able to have international pressure on the decision-making process. And this could happen on different levels. That was only an example. So that's why when we map our stakeholders, just think of everyone. Even if there's, for example, a campaign, okay, so if we're working on an environmental issue, and I'll take an example of the bean work. So the bean could identify the central relationship here, and then move into on local level, what other organization we have who work on the same issue of environment, and we map them and we include them. So what are the governmental bodies that are also in there, and then start also identifying the ones on the international level. So this is a summary of what I said. And then after we do this, we start putting connections between people. So this is also an example of a map for a case study we documented 10 years ago now, about an issue of early marriage. So we identify the relationship, and then we really need to understand what types of relationship they are. So where are the positive relationship, where are the negative relationships, and also where are the relationships that I don't really know or have information about. And this will help me search for more information and know more about where we're going. And the other tool is that, okay, so we mapped all these stakeholders, and now I need to know who's on my side, who is not, and how that whole dynamic is, because, and this is called the spectrum of allies. And here we divide the people who we've identified in the tactical map into this, saying that we have people who are active ally, that who are, you know, either like supporting me in my campaign or working on similar campaigns. There's passive ally who would say to you, you know, I'm with you, you know, this is very interesting, but, you know, I'm not doing anything about it. They're neutral people who either like are not interested in your campaign or don't have enough information about your campaign. There's passive opponents who are against you, but at the same time not doing anything about it. And there's the active opponents who are like fiercely having a counter campaign about, you know, this issue. So so it's very important to divide people into that spectrum and know where's their exact location. This will help you actually in later on when you select a certain target group and you know where their position is, you will be selecting tactics that suits their position. So if I'm working with tactics with active allies, that's like they have different tactics, that different activities that I'll be working with them on than, for example, passive opponents or active opponents. And we usually say that our target is to move the target only one section in each point of working in our campaign. So it's really impossible to have an active opponent become an active ally. You know, that is like not smart or not accurate. But then we could have an active opponent move into a passive opponent. And we could move people who are neutral to passive allies and then active allies. And the people who are in the active allies, we always need to keep them encouraged and include them in activity to keep their level of energy and level of passion toward the case that we're working on high. And this is how it would look at the spectrum, the tactical map, and the spectrum of allies. And based on this analysis, it will help us later on in drafting our goal, our tactics, and everything. So here, for example, we have the problem, and this is what we call the strategic path for our campaign. So we have the problem statement, which is the starting point. We have the vision that is here. Then we start putting our strategy by setting goals. So we could have 1 goal, 2 goals, 3 goals, depends on the campaign. And actually what moves my goals are tactics. So if I have goals, then perfect, amazing, but then I can't move forward. But what will move my strategy ahead are the sets of tactics that I'm going to be writing and implementing. And I'll say that if we have, like I see this as driving a car, a tactic is neither a specific procedure or a group of procedures taken to affect a position of the target group. A tactic is how to work, plan in order to move strategically forward. The success of a tactic depends on how it is used while underrelated with other tactics. And a tactic is a procedure tool, and it's an integral part of the strategy. So we could say if we have only one tactic, this means we have 1 wheel of a car, and I will definitely need 4 wheels to keep the car moving. So that's why we need to have different tactics that will help me move my strategy ahead. And this is here we started already in exploring tactic, and here we talk about that we need to identify a SMART goal. And I'm not going to go into that because I think everyone knows what a SMART goal is. But that's really important in identifying one or several SMART goals in your tactical, in your map, sorry, in your campaign. And we really need to know what is the aim of my campaign. So it could be prevention, it could be intervention, it could be restorative, and it could be promotion. And if I know what tactical aim, we call this a tactical aim, what tactical aim I want to have, can someone help me with how much time do I still have?
Really?
Maybe 5 minutes, but if you need a little more time,
okay,
take it, because it's very important to finish the method.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you. Because I see a lot of in the chat. I thought one of them is for me, but I couldn't keep up with the. Okay, so go back to the tactical aim, and this is really important that your campaign have one tactical aim, which is so. And I will give example about each aim. So you could, and I'll give a very silly example, but then that will help you to understand it. So when we talk about prevention, it's a type of tactic that is aimed to prevent violation from occurring. So for example, if we, this happens that, for example, we see women and girls are more vulnerable for violence. And then here where we do is that we start educating them and raising their awareness about about important of protecting themselves, standing for themselves, speaking out, seeking help and support, reporting to authorities. So that is prevention. And when we talk about prevention, we usually talk about a target group that is is being targeted or is in position of being targeted. Same, for example, when we say vaccination for children. So it is seen that, for example, children are more vulnerable for certain diseases and all that. So that's why they have a vaccination program that is that we provide promotion for it. We provide it to provide awareness for it. So it is a prevention technique. We see that technique in reserves that are built for a certain habitat or a certain areas or community to prevent that community or that habitat from being damaged because it is targeted. Then intervention is a types of tactics that intervene in a situation. So when we say intervention, we means that the violation is taking place right now. Okay, so that could be, for example, two people fighting in the street, and we intervene directly to stop that. Intervention could be, for example, if we want to go to example of a violation. It could be that providing a shelter for women who are being abused. So this is, you are intervening, you're removing her from the location that is causing her the violation, and then we're moving her to a safer place. Restorative is more something that you do after the assault or after the violation has took place. So for example, it could be financial. So it could be financial reimbursement or financial compensation. It could be a legal decision. So it could be a court decision. It could be a memorial because people have lost their life or suffered. So there is a memorial that is taking place to remember them. So restoration could be on different level. And promotion is when we promote a human rights culture about a certain issue. And I'll just give an example of a recent event, which is the Earth Hour. So Earth is for all of us, and it should concern everyone. So that's why Earth Hour is considered a promotional tactical aim for environment. And the last one is take action. And in take action, it's very simple. It's just like any other action plan that you would put, but it's really important after you have wrote all these tactics and came up with them, is to have a detailed action plan of how do you want to implement it, who is implementing it, when, what resources you have, and what resources you need. So I'm gonna be showing a movie. It's called the Tactical Mapping Tool, the TMT, which is an online tool that okay.
Where do you start when the issue seems too big, too complex? You start here. You tactical map it. Welcome to the Tactical Map Tool by New Tactics in Human Rights. Use it to stay flexible, innovative, and a step ahead of your opponents. Use it to effect change. Create a secure user account and begin to form the foundations of your tactical map. Through a series of questions, you will create problem and vision statement to serve as a guide to build your tactical map. Identify 2 individuals that represent the issue you seek to address. These 2 people are the center relationship of your map, from which all other actors emerge. Keep track of key actors by adding them to your actor database online. Or start compiling offline to upload later with the CSV template. Understand and analyze how actors are interconnected, and assign relationships between actors to better assess power dynamics and the ripple effects of action. Designate for each actor a place on the spectrum of allies, and use the visualization to better understand who is working for and against your issue. Organize and collaborate with your team with notifications. Track and plan your progress with the tactical action timeline by adding reports to your map. With your tactical map, you can make the human rights change you envision.
Okay, so this tool actually is available for anyone who would like to use it. It helps people who would like to first. This tool is available in Arabic and English. It's safe, it's on all server, and any campaigns that you would enter and plan on this campaign you would only have the access to it. Of course, along with other group members who you would decide to be part of that action plan. So it really help you start planning and working together on one platform. And people who live in different governorate, different countries, and working on one campaign, they could easily check the updates, communicate with each other, and have their campaign being updated ongoing. One last thing that I would like to add is I wanted to show another movie, but I think I can just summarize one of the campaigns that we have worked on, and now I'll send you the link to the case documentation of that campaign. In Jordan, we have really short shores, and it's only 13 kilometers originally, and that has been being privatized for hotels and big chains, which made people don't have any access to public beaches. And there was a campaign that was initiated by a local NGO in Jordan to and by the end of, for a certain period, we only have 5 kilometers left that were also in danger of being taken and, you know, being private and all that. So the campaign leaders worked on making sure that these 5 kilometers are identified in the master plan of the city as public beaches and are not allowed to being sold by the local community or the local municipality there, unless they take approval from the prime minister, and the cabinet actually itself have to sign in it. And since 2012 until now, nothing has been sold from that 5 kilometers, and people are enjoying their public, their free access to public place. This is one of them. I'll share the details in the chat, and thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, Noah. Thank you very much for that presentation. It was really insightful, and having such practical steps around advocacy was a really useful thing, I think, for this crowd of people. I'm going to introduce our next speaker immediately, and then we're going to open up for questions afterwards. So please keep your questions for Noah just until after the next presentation, and then we'll have a moment to ask questions directly to both speakers. Our next speaker is Ms. Hala Murad, and we are, it's a great privilege to be able to hear the two presentations alongside one another, because Hala actually did some of the training that Noah's just spoken about with New Tactics. So Hala is an activist in the field of human rights and environment, and she's also interested in sustainable development. She holds a master's degree in socio-ecological science, and her thesis on climate change and its impact on local community in the Jordan Valley. Currently, she is Executive Director of the Debeen Association for Environmental Development, and she manages its projects and is its general vision maker. The last of which of the projects that she's involved in is a project to enhance women's participation in environmental decision making. And she's a facilitator in the International Working Group for Multi-Level Advocacy with the Habitat International Coalition, which is essentially that she's been part of the curation and creation of this co-learning space that you're all taking part of. So I'd like to welcome you, Hala, to the floor, and I'm going to give you presenting rights so that you can show your slideshow. Thank you, Hala. Oh, you're on mute.
شكرا يا نادين.
Thank you, Nadine. First, I'm very happy and proud to be part of this learning space, to which about 40 participants joined over the past three sessions. Many of the colleagues and the friends also joined from different areas and regions. I am asked to give my presentation in 15 minutes. I will try to summarize as much as possible.
أعدك بذلك، أحاول جاهدة. نبهيني كمان ماندي. هل ترون العرض؟
Can you see the presentation?
Yes, we can, yes.
I just want to open the slides. I will present them this way because they're not allowing me to enlarge it. To start with, in Noor's presentation, I would like through this platform to also thank her for being with us today, because during my past years, in particular, in 2017, I was lucky to be part of the education team within the New Tactics program for 9 months of the fellowship that changed the life and work of the Bean Association from focusing only on raising awareness and the capacity building for local communities to becoming a pioneer organization in defending the rights of local communities, particularly to their natural resources having to do with land, forests, and water. So it was a qualitative change, and it was worth mentioning to say today that we are one of the associations working as a defender for human rights, particularly environmental rights. I would like to say that during the fellowship period, we directly searched for a real problem to use the new tactics methodology in order for us to apply practically rather than it being restricted to a theoretical training. There were problems having to do with the use of forests and land in the north of Jordan. Jordan has about 9% of its land that are being violated systematically, either on part of the government or citizens. However, when we wanted to work on this issue, we had main determinants that we had to take into consideration, as Noor mentioned, that when it has to do with the environment, we usually address them from a technical aspect rather than a human, or how it affects the lives of people in their well-being. There were three determinants or three criteria in order for the cases or the issues to be advocacy campaigns to have a clear damage to the local communities. The second criterion is that there is a violation in or a legal gap, because we sometimes notice that the problem is not in the problem, but in the implementation. In some cases, there is also a problem with the law, that it is either absent or it doesn't cover the existing violations. Also, the poor commitment to international agreements. Jordan signed the total of the international protocols and agreements, but the implementation mechanisms make us face a major challenge. How can we assess the rights, the situation on Jordan? We were searching for the international framework that governs lands and forests internationally. We found a lot of international policies. There is the land rights special rapporteur. There's a special rapporteur for the environmental rights. We gathered some information that there are different mechanisms of the UN, that the land is not just a commodity, also the forest and many of the international instruments. It's one of the human rights assessing resources that help against the climate change, as well as for the well-being of humans. These are the basic foundations from which our campaigns would emanate in order for us to address human rights. And based on this and finding these campaigns since 2018, the Bean started to implement this work directly. We had a campaign related to protection of land and forest against use as stations to manage solid waste. There were also Jordanian Forest Week campaign to raise awareness and build government and civil society organization capacity. There was also a campaign to protect the agricultural valleys and lands to protect them from becoming used for other objectives, and to protect our rights to food. Also, there was a campaign to document and inform about the fires that are being committed annually on part of the Israeli occupation that does away with a lot of animal wealth as well as plant wealth as well as land. There was a campaign to protect the trees and lands in the area of Naur. It's in Amman, to stop the depletion of land for solar energy. Now we would like to have renewable energy. However, the practices of the use of land to produce this renewable energy are not optimal. They're not good. They use agricultural land or land close to housing. And we justify this that we want renewable energy. However, the reality that we will need to have systems and laws to protect the land against such practices that seem to be sustainable, but in reality are not. And in order to be more practical, I will present to you one of the most important campaigns where we use the methodology of the new tactics for human rights in order to document a complete and implement a complete advocacy campaign that started on the local level and then was moved to the national and the international levels. The campaign was to protect the land and forest that was meant to become a station to manage and gather, collect waste in the area. It was allocated by a decision from the cabinet, and we received this complaint from an environmental association in the area at the same time that we were committed to the new tactics program. So this program helped us to perform this campaign and to achieve real successes. We were ordered to go into this world. The campaign, before it becoming a campaign, the issue started. We needed to see if it fulfilled the three criteria, if there was violation to the use of the law, if it affected people, and if it violated international agreements. So it fulfilled the three criteria. So Jordan has agreed or signed relevant agreements, and therefore we worked on the five-step methodology. We determined the problem with the citizens, and we started to think how we can use the 5 steps. And these are the 5 steps. Noor presented them in English, and these are the 5 steps in Arabic. We started to think more how we can know. The first step was to search for the information, who issued this decision, who allocated this land in favor of which entity, who finances this and who implements it, who are the entities that are benefiting one way or another, and how can we analyze all this. We learned that it was a United Nations agency that was implementing, and also one of the embassies funded this project. We learned more that the topic did not have a real environmental impact study and did not take into consideration the local community. We were able to access some of the documents about the technical committee that advised against implementing this project. We were able to perform this campaign, and we were successful. Noor showed us the spectrum of allies and adversaries. It was one of the tools that was used. Who can we resort to? Who are neutral, who are affected, who are the enemies on the other side. There were the ministries, there the international organizations working on the project. We also had support from the local community, some associations. We established an alliance, and we called it the Alliance of the Associations for Forests and Land. We started to work basically to find the vision. This was the first of the papers that you see here, which shows how we built the vision and some of the goals, smart goals, the reasonable goals, how we established the tactics that were direct and specific tactics with clear goals. And if we typed out the last paper, and we wanted to preserve the land and the forests and to preserve the healthy environment. We wanted to stop the project in this area and to protect the land and the forest, and also to raise the awareness of the local community in Jerish and the surrounding areas, and also to modify the land use system that allows the cabinet to issue this decision on the local and the national levels. These were the clear objectives. I want to tell you quickly that we went also to international objectives, because we found out that there were international entities funding, and those implementing also were international and UN agencies, and therefore we needed to reach the international level to address the international institutions in the funding countries, and also the implementing institutions. And also there was an investigation office in New York who did extensive investigations, and this was the start. However, we started on the local level, and then we went up to reach the international level, and then we started to prepare the tactics. And for every activity or intervention we had to do, there were beneficiaries, and the activity itself, its outputs, and a number of tactics. The tactics had to do with working with the community, finding the sittings, also meeting with the civil society, with the government. We reached the cabinet. We also had meetings with the permanent organizations and the implementing organizations, and we had direct activities on the ground that we wanted to protect, sorry, and also having alliances, as well as communicating with the outside entities. We wrote a report that reached the Human Rights Office in Geneva. This was the first post that we published when the trees were cut. Unfortunately, when we started the campaign, the government entities in the middle of the night sent their forces to cut the trees in order to say that this area is free of any trees, and this is the part where tens of thousands of people who knew the area knew that it's a forest area. And there was also direct activities that when we take a step and the government would take a step against it, we tried to be serious. And unfortunately, the first environmental campaign that may be serious, where the government community did not believe that a local organization could do all these activities on a continuous basis. These are some of the pictures. No to establishing waste stations in the forest areas, and these are some of the activities that the young people took. It's written in English and Arabic because we were targeting the international community as well. We also organized Friday prayers in an area near the village area, because they didn't only cut the land and then they violated the right of the soil that is formed over millions of years. They also try to destroy it to say that we are continuing. We continue to work and to hold meetings, to work with the communities. The processes of the activities linked to this with directions from the new tactics program. We built a daily plan or weekly plans, but every time we faced some challenges. Here is the signing of the alliance. The issue also were covered by news media and had coverage, media coverage. The results after 1.5 years of this continuous work, the results had to do with raising the awareness of the community. The project was completely stopped and moved to another more suitable area. We talked also about, it was the first incident that documents on the UN level where some UN agencies would do some work where they can violate the laws. There were also a lot of advice on part of UN organizations that are afraid to do similar work because they know that there are organizations that are alert to defend the rights of people and the rights of the local communities. There was the need for having national teams to follow up and assess what international programs and UN organizations do on the ground. And we also had the HIC network. Working with HIC was one of the outputs of the campaigns that we perform, because we want to network on the international level and to have international presence. Today, we continue. We have 2 campaigns on the ground. One campaign to gather environmental information, and also to assess renewable energy projects. This is what we are doing currently. We try to follow up if there are any projects that violate the rights of people to land, to housing, and to natural resources such as forests. Thank you for listening. I apologize for having taken longer than the time allocated for me. This was one of the campaigns that followed the 5-step methodology through which we were able to achieve real results. And today we are one of the organizations that use this methodology. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ala. Thank you. For all the participants, just so that you know, we will make this presentation available on Google Classrooms, and we will translate it as well so that you can look at it in your own time after the presentations. We now have just a few minutes to take some questions from the floor, and then we will allow Hala and Noor to respond to your questions before we move to the next part of the session for today and the last part. So you may raise your hand and I will, we'll give a few participants a chance to ask a question directly to the speakers. Maybe the questions are a bit slow to come in. Could I ask Enrique or Emmanuel to give us a comment or a question while we give the participants some time? Enrique.
Gracias, Nadine.
Thank you, Nadine. Thank you very much. Noor and Hala, thank you so much for this amazing presentation, the work that you're doing, how you're implementing this strategies, tactical strategies for advocacy is so interesting. And for today's session, I think that we have covered a lot by listening to your practical experiences. So I thank you. My question would be, for instance, what about the mapping of the actors, the stakeholders, the allies, the enemies, the neutral people? Does this change throughout a campaign? Because Noor spoke about how it would be ideal for us to help people be convinced and change their stance, their position. So in your experience, did you have to change that? Do you monitor the current position of the actors? Are they swinging to one side or another? Do you follow newspaper reports, or if somebody has changed a stand, what do you do? Because I think that it's not only about the initial planning, but the permanent supervising, the monitoring, how the players change in their attitudes. How do you do that all throughout the campaign? That would be something really useful to know. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That's a great question, actually. So I'll tell you that people change their position, and the change in position could happen for two reasons. So one could happen because of your campaign, which is good, and this is actually how we have also developed monitoring and evaluation tools to see to measure the success of campaigns, because measuring success of campaigns is totally different than project management monitoring and evaluation. And this is what we try to mainstream, is that you can't monitor and evaluate your campaign in the same way you do for your project. So one of the successes actually that we measure for the campaign is were you able to move people from negative position toward a more positive position toward your campaign. And that is one of the successes. We track them. We have a tool that is called, or a sheet actually, where people start tracking the change in their campaign. It's called spectrum change, and it helps you track where people have gone. The other thing is that people could change their position, not due to your campaign, but we also track them as well, and we make sure to update them. This could be coming from press releases or from even meetings. So in meetings, in the first meeting, you would find a municipal leader or a government leader, or whatever decision maker in a certain position. And then later, after he have consulted with authorities, with, after he has been talked to sometime from other people, I don't want to mention details, but then they change their position. So you meet them next time and you find they're no longer, for example, a passive ally. They're actually an opponent. And this is because of the nature of their work. So that's totally happened. And when that happened, we need to see how we can shift them back, or is there another target or another stakeholder that we need to work with to achieve the change that we want?
Thank you, Noor. That was very insightful. I'm going to take a question from Emmanuel, and then if there's any more participants that would like to ask a question, please raise your hand. Emmanuel.
Thank you very much, Nadine. Maybe it's not a question, but just a comment that, to me, I feel the objective of this co-learning space has been at least reached, not at least something that has happened, because when the survey results were coming, there was some questions which we felt that maybe we don't have many strategies that are in place or platform. then to me, and I'm sure even a number of African countries, this is an eye-opener, because the process that the two presenters has presented has helped us to appreciate working with other people in an alliance. Then also, it also gives us a question or an hope to utilize certain structures which are found in African continent where civil society hasn't even been presented themselves. There are protocols, as I said earlier on, which just end up your government signing something and it ends there. The next thing you see is an investor coming, pushing people out, closing the forests, or even utilizing the resources without question. So for me, it's just a good thing that has happened, especially this space has come before we end the all three themes. So it has helped us that we learn from the feminists and we learn from this. Then as we do the land rights, definitely will be at a higher level. That's my contribution. Thank you.
Thank you, Emmanuel. Thank you for that reflection. Yeah, I think it was a really wonderful combination to have both Noah and Hala presenting to us today, and seeing the practical examples from Hala, and really almost our very own training in the new tactics strategy for advocacy today in the session. So thank you very much to both of you, and yeah, and we will share the materials on the classroom so that everyone can have a look at them in their own time. Everything that Noah is sharing on the chat, we will also include in the classroom. So thank you very much. I'm going to now move us along, because I'm not seeing any more questions coming through, into the last section of our conversation today. And I'm going to hand the mic back to my colleague, Yolanda, and we're going to talk about next steps and going forward.
Thank you very much, Nadine. Thank you, Noor. Thank you, Hala. Agreed. It's been a very rich dive into practice and getting ready for practice. Nadine, may I ask you to share the presentation if possible, or at least the slides for the section? That's actually the question here for us. We've, as I said at the beginning, and I think as you know, as we've journeyed together, this is the last session of our co-learning and advocacy space, but it's not the last time for us to gather like this or to engage. In fact, it's the beginning. And the question for us, and of course I imagine for you as well, is what's next? So there are a couple of, you can skip to the next slide, please. So the question that I imagine might be on your minds is, how do we take this forward in our own context, in our own organizations, and also where can HIC support me and my organization or us in different advocacy actions across the various spheres that we were speaking about. So without going into too much detail, I just want to give you some examples of the different spheres in which HIC can support you. So on the local and national sphere, for example, last year, one of our HIC members in Zimbabwe contacted HIC to support their process in contributing to the development of the new national human settlements policy. Then a HIC member in Spain also contacted HIC directly, the General Secretariat and the Housing and Land Rights Network as well. And also they're asking our President, Adriana Allen, to contribute muscle to advocating for the passing of an anti-eviction law in the Catalan region in Spain. So in these spaces, you know, if there's a very local or a particular initiative that you're pursuing where you would like to have a global muscle and support from the coalition, do connect with us. On the regional sphere, as you know, and as many of you know already, We have wonderful regional organizing spaces, particularly across Latin America, MENA region, and Africa. So in Latin America, we've got HIC Latin America office, and many of you here are very active members as well. And an example there is the Nuestros Barrios campaign, which I think my colleague Maria Silvia Emanueli can share a bit more about perhaps later. In HIC MENA, for example, members jointly coordinated inputs for the Arab Sustainable Development Forum, which is a regional forum. And in Africa, HIC members are coming together to coordinate inputs and sort of strategy approaches for networking, and at the Afri-Cities Conference in Kisumu in Kenya, which is taking place in May. And then at the global and international sphere, if you can just click back, in terms of the HIC structures, both the Housing and Land Rights Network and the General Secretariat are global structures that support membership globally. We support members on joint actions on various global opportunities like the new urban agenda, connecting with special rapporteurs and human rights commissions. Then, so that's just to give you a sense of who and how you can connect with HIC in these different spaces. Then practically, what are some perhaps groups you can join? So as you know, we've been having 3 co-learning and advocacy spaces. The first one was on feminist approaches. And out of that, we are forming a cross-regional working group on gender. And the first meeting is in April 2022. If you are interested, please follow the HIC website, social media, or drop us a message also in the chat so we can keep you informed on the exact date. We are forming also a cross-regional working group on land rights, with the first meeting being in June 2022. And then on a global level, HIC members and allies meet regularly, so every 3 months for our quarterly advocacy meetings. And the next one of those is on Thursday, the 26th of May. So you can mark that in your calendars. And also please do subscribe to our newsletter, and you will be informed in good time of these various opportunities. And of course, you can see here different links for the newsletter, social media, and so forth. I'd like to share with you also a tool that we have jointly been developing as the General Secretariat, HIC Latin America, MENA region, Africa, and also Housing and Land Rights Network, jointly collaborating on a global advocacy roadmap. And this roadmap has 2 components. One of them is a HIC advocacy calendar. And the purpose of this calendar, so if you look at it here, is to provide an overview of advocacy opportunities. This calendar is not necessarily a depiction of all of the activities that HIC is participating in, but it is there to give us an initial orientation of what are various opportunities in the year across various thematic areas. And so you can see each of these opportunities is color-coded according to different types of events and engagements. And what you don't see here, but we will share the link with you, there's a second tab to this calendar. So it's on a Excel sheet. And on the second sheet, it shows various opportunities and crosses them with key messages and themes that HIC is prioritizing, and looking at what are those messages and themes that we are wanting to draw through the various activities, or not activities so much, but the various advocacy opportunities that we are then making use of. And then in terms of this advocacy calendar, it's going to be updated quarterly. So every time that we meet for our quarterly advocacy meeting, we ask HIC members and allies to send us updates on various activities that you are participating in or that you are aware of. And we then update the calendar and also we'll upload it onto the website as well as share it through email. So that's a way to keep in touch or keep up to date with current events at HIC. Then perhaps just the last one of the last slides on upcoming global opportunities. So what I've done here is these 4 little boxes are magnified examples of some of the opportunities on the advocacy calendar. And we drew out some of the key global opportunities that are coming up. First one is on the 28th of April. And that's a high-level meeting on the implementation of the new urban agenda. And this is happening in New York, and it's taking place particularly in the context of the UN General Assembly presentation, in which the UN Secretary General will be sharing a report reflecting on 5 years later, reflecting on the implementation of the new urban agenda. And so for HIC, HIC was really founded across the various habitat conferences and has been tracking and very much contributing, influencing to the formation of these different agendas over the last 46 years now. And is engaging currently together with UCLG and the Global Platform for the Right to the City on joining processes there. Then a very big opportunity, which I think it's important, is the World Urban Forum. So coming up on the 26th to the 30th of June, you'll see there's a question mark there because of the instability surrounding the situation in Ukraine and Russia, whether it will take place, but this presents an opportunity for networking and collaborating between different actors and opportunities. It's not primarily an advocacy opportunity, but a conference, a coming together and a moment for us to mobilize and to galvanize momentum. We, as HIC, have submitted a number of side event applications. I'll just name a few here for you. One of them is a side event that's actually celebrating 45 years of HIC, particularly by looking at how HIC is building social force through co-learning and advocacy spaces. So it's very much reflecting on what this methodology and approach of co-learning, how that is contributing to building social force as a coalition. Then the Housing and Land Rights Network is also hosting a side event on a new UN stakeholder engagement approach and mechanism, which Joseph Chetler, my colleague, can tell you more about, and a number of other events, which we will share with you in due time. In July 2022 is the High-Level Political Forum on Sustainable Development. This relates directly to the session we had last week on the Global Sustainable Development System. A number of sustainable development goals will be reviewed. You can see them here. Goal 4, 5 on gender equality, 14, 15, and 17. This is also an opportunity for countries to engage in national and local voluntary reviews. I believe we'll have a link posted in the chat that you can check which countries are presenting their voluntary national reviews in 2022. And then lastly, so now we're moving into the second half of the year. In October, the 50th regular session of the Human Rights Council will be taking place, as well as the Universal Periodic Review, COP27 in November. And then, of course, all year long, we have the engagement with special rapporteurs and their thematic reports. Then very lastly, and we're very excited about inviting you to the next co-learning space on land rights. You can see the date there. It's happening in May. Over 4 weeks in May, applications will open in April, and you will be invited. You will receive an invitation via email. I know our colleague Heather Elidi is with us here. She's the learning officer who's been overseeing the preparation of this space, and perhaps we have some facilitators here as well with us, I'm not sure. But we can move to the next slide, which just gives us an overview. Heather, I'm not sure if you would like to speak to that briefly, just to share an overview of what the topics will be about.
Sure, yeah, I can do that.
Thanks.
Hello to everyone who I have not met yet. I'm Heather and I work with the Housing and Land Rights Network of HIC. So we've been working on the land rights space, which, as Yolande said, will happen in May. And I just want to say today is a fitting day to invite you all. March 30th is commemorated as Land Day in Palestine, which celebrates the first time that Palestinians came together from all regions, so from the occupied territories, from inside the Green Line, the refugee camps, to collectively struggle for their right to land and home. So I'm really happy that we can invite you all on this important day for Palestinians. So just to go through the different sessions that we will be holding, the first one will be on realizing the human right to land from a gender equality perspective. So framing the right to land in terms of human rights rather than property rights, which is what it's typically been looked at as. The second session will be on land tenure patterns and related violations and conflicts. Session 3 will include discussion on strategies and instruments to strengthen struggles on the right to land. And session 4 will be laying the foundations for a global land rights advocacy strategy. So taking a lot of the work that's been done in this multi-level advocacy space and bringing that to the theme of land rights. So I hope you'll all be able to register your interest to participate, and we look forward to seeing you there.
Thanks very much, Heather. Perhaps as we close, I would like to invite my colleagues Joseph and Sylvia, if you would like to share reflections, input, just on what we have discussed so far, also to you participating, any follow-up questions on what I've shared or what you've heard today or throughout the course, please feel free to also raise your hand and contribute. Perhaps Joseph or Sylvia, you're both welcome to take the floor.
Joseph can go ahead. I have.
Okay, great.
Yes.
Okay. You have. Hello, everyone. Yolande, how much time do you want?
So we've got 10 minutes overall. We could go 5 minutes over time. So maybe, I don't know, 2 or 3 minutes.
Okay. Well, just.
Hey, okay. Yolande?
Humphrey, yes.
How are you? And how a good evening? Oh, I don't know. Evening, morning, afternoon to all of you. Just excited to see all of you here. I'm also, you can see me. Okay. It's a bit at night. So maybe just to add one thing on the calendar, I think October UN Habitat offers a very good platform where we celebrate things that are happening in urban areas. So I don't know how you have structured or considered this. It's dubbed Urban October. So I don't know, maybe this month is a UN Habitat month, and perhaps it's also a good platform where as members or as participants here, we can agree to be doing something unique in the Urban October, something symbolic, and especially for HIC, I think this is very important. What do we want to celebrate in Urban October? From a housing perspective, it can be on either gender or water, but something that is related to housing. So I think that also can be something that maybe we think around, because I think it's either we can organize for an urban thinkers campus or something like that. So I just want to throw this in so that we also don't miss that opportunity. Thank you very much.
Humphrey, excellent. Thank you very much for raising that. That's absolutely what HIC also engages in every year, Urban October, and we'll certainly dedicate a quarterly advocacy meeting to strategizing around that together. So thank you. Joe, if I can pass the floor to you.
Okay, just 1 minute. I want to thank you for all the presentations. I just wanted to add something to what Yolanda pointed out at the beginning, and that is, if we're talking about advocacy in different spheres, this is a concept actually, and the term of spheres is something that comes out of the South African constitution and the debate around how to treat local government vis-a-vis central government.
I think Joe is still attending the executive board, yeah?
No, he's a contributor here. Yeah.
I'm speaking.
Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, and this is actually reflects an understanding that local activities are, for many people, the priority. And it's not by any means a lower level or a lower priority. But when we talk about advocacy at the international level or in the international sphere, it's usually something that HIC has done as a kind of a signature or a kind of identifiable HIC activity, as HIC was actually formed in a global process, which was, of course, the 1976 Housing and Human Settlements Conference of the UN. And many good things came out of that. But when we talk about the international advocacy, what's really important for us to note is that that is the level, or that is the sphere, or the channel through which we have something all in common. These global principles and these global commitments, and certainly the obligations of states, are the things that we all have in common. And it's in those spheres that we have the opportunity to develop and to demonstrate the social force that we're talking about around something as common to all of us as the human right to adequate housing. So just to throw that in there, that it's when we talk about these levels and why there is such a focus on what's happening in New York or in Geneva or in Nairobi for HIC advocacy, it's because all HIC members share that. And all HIC members are, for better or worse, operating under these global policies that our governments have committed themselves to. And when we do human rights advocacy, as Noor said, once you've been able to establish a right, a human right, which is also enshrined in law, that takes you so much further and faster up that mountain to your objective, because you don't have to begin with a moral argument or some outside persuasion. It's already enshrined and codified for us all to share, and it gives us the boost we need to achieve the goals that we're seeking. That's all. Thanks.
Thanks, Joe. That's really useful. Sylvia, go ahead.
Gracias, voy a hablar en español. Muy bien, creo que lo que dice Joseph lo compartimos en...
Great. What Joseph is saying, we agreed, and we do that in every region, and it is easier to propose collectively in the international environment our demands and concerns. However, it is true, as Noor mentioned, sometimes local groups consider that maybe it's not necessary to go to a higher level, but we need to assess if that is the case or not, because at the end of the day, this higher level, the international level, could help us to accomplish more things that we can accomplish locally. I think that at this higher level, at international level, this is something that not all the organizations do, but we need to listen to the voice of the territories, because it's not only about having experts talking about Standard 023, Section 18, and so forth, in a very specific terminology that sometimes is difficult to connect with the reality. Our effort oftentimes is about asking our membership to propose their problems to us in specific questions. What do they want to see in the agendas? And this is what we did the last time with the new urban agenda. So we have to translate this, but we need to insist that international organizations that are located in countries that is difficult for our memberships to get in due to visa issues, we can oblige them to listen to other voices and not only to the experts of the networks or the NGOs. They need to listen to social organizations that are a key element in the integration of our coalition as a fundamental group. That's why we have been doing some practices in international arenas like international committees that by using the international justification, they embedded into the local committees to have a very comprehensive approach and presenting into the table the main concerns of the movements. HIC was trying to translate that into the international arena. So that's what I wanted to share with you, this type of processes. On the other hand, two more things. I think that it has been important, and it's also very important to keep on learning about campaigns of pressures and all the actions that are being carried out by our membership. Today, we had the opportunity to learn about different spaces and groups that Yolande already mentioned, that they are going to keep on working with different issues like gender and land. Seems to be that local advocacy is difficult to support between one country and another and to generate connections. However, it is always relevant to learn about other strategies and to promote solidarity. Today, it's a very important day for Brazil, because at the beginning, we listened that this space, this day, they are celebrating zero evictions campaign. the minister should define today or tomorrow if they are going to extend or not this moratorium. So we have a campaign in Twitter supporting them. Of course, this is a strategy that we can support out of Brazil limitedly, but this is an advocacy that we can do because we know about that campaign. Otherwise, if we don't know about that, we cannot support them, right? And now, talking about lower levels of incidence, I know that it's difficult to talk about
So beyond the
advocacy
solidarity
and
we can do, as
solidarity.
Johan said, in the World Habitat Day that was mentioned by the colleague not long ago, in Latin America, we have tried to elaborate our collective
Sorry,
manifestos.
Sylvia, could you pause one moment? We just seem to be hearing one of our interpreters on the floor. Okay, let's try again.
Hello, testing, testing.
Yes, we can hear you on the floor, at least in the English channel. Okay, yeah.
Well, I did nothing differently.
How strange, okay. Sylvia, do you want to continue?
Sí,
speaking?
solo para terminar.
Just to wrap it up, I'd like to say that we've made this effort of having a regional manifesto on the World Habitat Day, so as to it is agreed at the regional level, after all, and all of the membership all around Habitat Day are carrying this common message through, even though obviously each country has certain differences. So maybe that is not the advocacy in the strict sense of the word, because sometimes it is difficult to give follow-up to whatever changes that happened after the manifesto, but still it is something that can help us express our strategies out in the field and express our concerns. So this is just to give some other ideas of what we have done and how important it is for us to see that the voices of the territories are heard even in those international arena that have excluded them because they're only for experts, because that's not HIC's style. Thank you.
Sylvia, thank you so much. It's been rich, and I think it's often felt like we've just touched the tip of the iceberg in our conversations over these last 4 sessions, and unfortunately we're reaching our time again. But I would very much like to thank each of you participants for accompanying us over the last 4 weeks, actually, for that we could co-create together and literally co-learn and explore. As we close, perhaps if you would be able to stay another 5 minutes, I would like to hand the floor to our wonderful facilitators and to our learning officer, Areli. They have each put in so much time and thought and really constantly had you in mind. And so I would like to ask each of you just to share a few brief closing reflections, but also extend my very heartfelt thanks to each of you. Perhaps we can start with Hala, and then Hala, you can pass the floor to one of your colleagues next.
شكرا يولاندا.
Thank you, Yolanda. Thank you very much to HIC for this project that I believe is of utmost importance on local regional cooperation in the areas having to do with the issues we work on, be it the land, human rights, and also habitats. We all hope we were able to reach together something new that is important and a positive step. This is only one step on the right direction. We aren't finished yet. We need to work together on the plan that Yolanda has presented, and along the path we all we all have visions and dreams. We have issues to struggle for, And we hope that the environmental issue and the resources and land is one of your issues on the various levels we work through. We thank you for your presence, for your commitment. We are very happy that we were able at the end of this year day to be together over 4 sessions and over for 1 month. I give the floor to my colleague Enrique to speak to you from another part of the world.
Muchas gracias, querida Hala.
Thank you, dear Hala. And as of Brazil, I am sending my best to all of the people on the call. It was a great pleasure. This has been a process that took many months, sharing ideas and exploring possibilities from Latin America, Africa, and the MENA region. This was a very enriching process, and I thank my facilitating colleagues, Jale Manuel Areli, our dear coordinator and pedagogical consultant, to all of the Secretary General's team, to all of the regional coordinators of HIC. Thank you so much to them as well, because it was a collective effort in the true sense of the word. And I believe that in these 4 weeks, we have grown in our common understanding of the possibilities of carrying out advocacy that is a joint effort between the organizations, and by exchanging our experiences. We're moving forward. We now understand that advocacy is not only speak about our concerns and complain, but it's to do something about that, to be effective in promoting change. We're also learning that there are some other people who are doing advocacy, even people who are opposing our goals. They do their own advocacy. So we don't romanticize saying that advocacy is only for human rights defenders. No, there are many other people in the ecosystem who do their advocacy for the opposite purpose. So we need to unite our strength as members, as allies of HIC, so that together we can have a greater influence in a more effective way in all of those spheres. And personally, for me, something that I take away is that the spheres, they are not separated. You cannot separate the local, the regional, the international. They all go together. So it's about connecting and using the different tools and the different advocacy spaces, the different standards, rules, regulations, the national ones, the international agreements, so that we carry out a strategic advocacy. So we should not separate the spheres, but unite them in our efforts. Thank you very much, because that was something new that I learned, that I realized, and many other things. And I remember Yolanda's words, we're closing a cycle, but this is merely the beginning of a new moment, and we hope to see you once again in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Enrique. Then I will ask Emmanuel, please, to take the floor before we move to Areli.
Thank you very much, Yolande. This has been a very good moment to me, because participating in this space has opened my mind, and I've seen where the gaps are in terms of advocacy. Because a number of activities that we do could be like the way the Chinese philosopher put it, that could be a defeat before even, or you are just making noise. But I'm sure now we have moved from making noise, we'll go into doing something that will be tangible. And also the support that we received from HIC Secretariat, and also the support received from Areli and Nadine. Also my colleagues, Enrique and Hara, we've been working as a team, and we have learned from one another how to go about this work. This has been a wonderful journey, and I'm sure as we conclude the land rights, it will be a different group as a response to the nation, or to the HIC, in the background of the learning space, that we want to build our strength and solidarity in the world. I thank you.
Thank you, Manuel. Before I pass to Aurélie, another reminder, please sign up to the newsletter. If you're not on our mailing list, put your email in the chat or send it to us directly so we can communicate. We will let you know about all the opportunities we've shared also on the slides. Aurélie, over to you.
Gracias.
Thank you, Rich.
A todas, a todos.
I thank everyone. And here from Mexico, this is where I live. This is how I collaborate with the regional HIC Latin American network. I just want to express my enthusiasm and my joy, how grateful I feel for this opportunity of having this interregional learning. And I think that the main reflection I take away with me is that in our different countries and regions, we perhaps were facing overwhelming challenges, very painful, very conflictive, but realizing that all these people, the organizations behind these people, and the people who have collaborated in one way or another, all of us, we are betting on believing that we can change the world, that we can transform things. That is our main wish. That is why we are working together. That is why we adhere to these processes. And I believe that this is just fantastic. It gives me hope that a coalition of the relevance and diversity as Habitat Coalition has, in spite of it all, we're still betting on advocacy, transforming the world, and that it inspires me deeply. Congratulations, everyone.
Wonderful. Perhaps lastly, we, if you consent, we would also like to share with you the emails of all the participants so that you can also continue connecting with each other. You can absolutely do that. I think that's one of the really rich experiences here, is to connect cross-regionally, and you don't need HIC as such to do that. And then we ask you also, please, you've seen Nadine has shared the reflection form. If you would please take some time to fill that in. It's always so valuable to hear your thoughts. And so I think that's it. A very big thank you. And more connecting on Google Classroom, and hopefully at our next HIC advocacy meeting and the working groups. So thanks again, and have a very good morning, night, or day, depending on where you are.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, bye, everyone.
Muchas gracias. Hasta luego.
Hasta luego.
Muchas gracias, Silvia.
Chao. Hasta luego.
Chao.
Gracias.
Un abrazo para todos.
Gracias. Saludos a todas, abrazos.
Gracias, Annelies.
Adiós.
Annelies.
Ciao, Pesca.
Hola.
شكرا جزيلا نراكم إن شاء الله.
Recording going and stuff.
Oh,
the
just keep the
local.
cloud recording. Yeah.
So everyone doing local
Sorry.
recordings and stuff.